Generally, fanfiction is seen as something childish and for younger adults, generally for teenagers, to sort of live out and play out their favorite fantasies that you don't actually get to see in the original content. Fanfiction can actually appeal to a much wider audience. There are plenty of adults, young and old, that enjoy reading and writing fanfiction because they want to see more of the content they never got to see in the original story. TV shows, books, movies, they all have limited time spaces in what they can and can't show, and fanfiction kind of provides that avenue to give more screen time for the characters that we don't actually get to see due to time limitations in all of these mediums. Fanfiction is kind of a way to quench your desire to see more of what you love. That's what fanfiction is for, and that's why people either write or read the fanfiction of the fandoms that they like. That being said, fanfiction can fall onto one of three categories. I call it the 99 and 1% rule, wherein bottom 90% of fanfiction that is ever written is generally trashy. It's garbage, it's low quality content, it's amateur writers that are just not good at writing at all. Under the 90%, I would say you can consider smutty romances, self-inserts, original characters. While all of these tropes are not always the bottom 90%, they're good indicators for if it is a bottom 90%. The 9% is actually surprisingly entertaining, and if you actually want to see more of the fandom you like, then the 9% is generally decent, good writing, consistency, plot development, characterization, and evolution in the story is what makes the 9% readable. Generally, the 9% is a category of stories that you want to look for. The 9% is something you can casually read the same way you would actually read a regular book, because believe it or not, there can be published books that are worse than fanfiction. Fanfiction is just a writing medium. People are using and recycling characters that they like to tell these stories that they want to tell. I want to describe fanfiction like writing with a crutch, because you kind of get to skip the step of making likable characters and use characters that are already likable. That way you can use these characters to draw out the plots that you enjoy and create the story that you want to share. Another benefit to fanfiction is that you have an audience that is already invested in these characters, so that they're actually willing to give you their time to review and read your story. They could give you critiques, plot points, requests, and you as a writer can respond however way you would prefer. Fanfiction needs to be considered more like amateur writing. It shouldn't really be considered as something that is childish for people who are under 16. Some fanfictions can be very expansive or very weak and amateurish, just like a regular amateur writer would. I myself wrote a lot of fanfiction with the intent of using it as a crutch to understand writing structure in the hopes that I could write my own original works later. Now, not everyone writes fanfiction as practice round before writing their original stories, but that's actually what I decided to do, and I think it was a very enjoyable experience because while I was writing these fanfictions, I could actually interact with the people who are really into the same things as I am. Fanfiction is a good way to kind of interact with a community of people that are into the same interests as yourself. Now, I kind of held this for last. Then there is the top 1% of fanfiction. The top 1% of stories that just have a very good and compelling story. The top 1% fanfiction, the best way I can describe it, is something that exceeds the original story and adds more content and depth into the fandom that you like. That being said, it's very hard to find the top 1% of fanfiction, and you should probably go in not expecting to find the top 1%. But the top 1% of fanfiction is basically expert writers wanting to write stories in a world that they love. And while 90% of the fanfiction does give humanity a bad name, the top 1% kind of saves humanity from that bad name, because the 9% and the top 1% are people who are actually interested in the entertainment and the entertainment of others. That being said, I can't really tell you what makes a good fanfiction, but what I can tell you is if you actually want to write a good fanfiction, You have to learn to learn. You have to treat fanfiction like actual writing, professional writing. You have to look into the understanding of writing style, plot structure, characterization, in-depth understanding of psychology. These are all things that writers should generally know, and these things are all applied to fanfiction, because fanfiction, regardless of whether or not it's childish, it is just a medium to tell a story full of people that you already like. To reach the 9%, you just have to take consideration of what you're writing into. Check your words, make sure the grammar is alright, be careful with that dialogue, show, don't tell. These are all very difficult concepts for professional writers to do, but it needs to be applied to your fanfiction writing if you don't want to be the bottom 90%.